The sun was merciless that afternoon. Heat shimmered over the two-lane road, turning the asphalt into a wavering river of gray. Along the sidewalk, makeshift stalls lined the curb. Wooden tables, bamboo crates, umbrellas tied to rusted metal poles. Piles of tomatoes, pechay, eggplants, onions, and squash gave the street a burst of color that almost made people forget how hot it was. At one of the smaller tables stood a woman in a beige apron. Her name was Laura Vergara. She moved with quiet efficiency, arranging vegetables into neat rows, wiping dust from the green bell peppers, turning the reddest tomatoes so their best sides faced the street. Every time a tricycle slowed or a pedestrian passed, she greeted them with the same gentle smile. "Fresh malunggay po, just picked this morning." A mother stopped to buy 2 bundles, exchanging a few coins and a tired joke about stretching the week's budget. Lara laughed softly, weighed the vegetables properly, and slipped them into a brown paper bag. No one who saw her that day would have guessed that the apron was a costume. Hidden in the side pocket of her canvas bag, behind a folded umbrella and a reusable water bottle, was an ID bearing the seal of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG. Under the seal, her real title, Laura Vergara, Field Auditor, Law Enforcement Oversight. For the last 3 weeks, Laura had been in this town quietly taking notes about the barangay hall, the police station, the traffic enforcers, the way ordinary people were treated when they had no idea anyone was watching. Selling vegetables by the roadside today was part of that plan. Several vendors had told her the same story in hushed voices, that small sellers were harassed for illegal vending, while bigger stalls owned by relatives of local officials blocked whole sidewalks without a problem. She wanted to see with her own eyes if that was true. So she rented a small spot from a farmer on the outskirts, got up before dawn to help harvest, and pushed a borrowed kariton into town with her goods. To everyone else, she was just another vendor trying to survive. The first hour passed quietly. A few customers bought, most merely glanced. Heat shimmered over the 2-lane road, turning the asphalt into a wavering river of gray. At one of the smaller tables stood a woman in a beige apron. Her name was Laura Vergara. She moved with quiet efficiency, arranging vegetables into neat rows, wiping dust from the green bell peppers, turning the reddest tomatoes so their best sides faced the street. Every time a tricycle slowed or a pedestrian passed, she greeted them with the same gentle smile. "Fresh malunggay po, just picked this morning." A mother stopped to buy 2 bundles, exchanging a few coins and a tired joke about stretching the week's budget. Lara laughed softly, weighed the vegetables properly, and slipped them into a brown paper bag. No one who saw her that day would have guessed that the apron was a costume. Hidden in the side pocket of her canvas bag, behind a folded umbrella and a reusable water bottle, was an ID bearing the seal of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, DILG. Under the seal, her real title, Laura Vergara, Field Auditor, Law Enforcement Oversight. For the last 3 weeks, Laura had been in this town quietly taking notes about the barangay hall, the police station, the traffic enforcers, the way ordinary people were treated when they had no idea anyone was watching. Selling vegetables by the roadside today was part of that plan. Several vendors had told her the same story in hushed voices, that small sellers were harassed for illegal vending, while bigger stalls owned by relatives of local officials blocked whole sidewalks without a problem. She wanted to see with her own eyes if that was true. So she rented a small spot from a farmer on the outskirts, got up before dawn to help harvest, and pushed a borrowed kariton into town with her goods. To everyone else, she was just another vendor trying to survive. The first hour passed quietly. A few customers bought, most merely glanced. Sweat rolled down Lara's back under the apron, but she kept her posture relaxed, her eyes open. She didn't have to wait long. A police patrol car cruised slowly down the road, window rolled halfway. Inside, Officer Renato Cruz squinted at the line of stalls. He'd been assigned to manage street vendors, a vague instruction that in practice meant occasionally chasing away those without permits and sometimes collecting fees that never showed up on official records. He was in a bad mood. The station's aircon had broken that morning, his sergeant had chewed him out for being late, and his side hustle of parking assistance outside a nearby bar had recently been threatened by a new officer who didn't know how things worked. As he scanned the sidewalk, his gaze landed on Lara's stall. She was set up in a space that, technically, was a gray area, near the pedestrian lane, a few inches outside the chalk-marked zones the municipal office had drawn for licensed vendors. The bigger stalls farther down were much more obstructive, but they paid regular rent, so he rarely bothered them. This woman, though, he didn't recognize her. He parked the police car abruptly, stepped out, and slammed the door with more force than necessary. His presence immediately sent a ripple down the line of vendors. Some looked away, others pretended to rearrange produce. A few, Lara noticed, relaxed when they realized he wasn't walking towards them. He was walking towards her. "Hoy," he barked as he approached, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Lara looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun. She kept her expression neutral. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm just renting a spot for today. I was told this side is okay as long as I don't block the sidewalk." Officer Cruz snorted. "Huh, told by who? Your kapit bahay?" he snapped. "This is public property. You can't just put a table wherever you want." He planted himself between her and the street, hands on his hips, blocking her stall from customers. Lara glanced at the ground. She really was a few inches outside the painted line. "If there's a problem, sir, I can move back," she replied calmly. "I'm only here for the day. I don't want any trouble." "You already made trouble the moment you set up here. Where's your permit?" "It's being processed," she lied calmly, just to see what he would do. "I was told that in the municipal office that I could sell while waiting." Behind her, an older vendor sucked in a breath, eyes widening. Lara didn't need to look to know everyone was listening. Officer Cruz rolled his eyes dramatically. "That's what all of you say. Always processing, always temporary." He grabbed the edge of her table and jolted it forward, vegetables wobbling. A tomato rolled off and splattered on the asphalt.
"Pack up," he ordered. "You're causing obstruction. If you don't want a violation ticket, move now." A small crowd began to gather. Pedestrians, other vendors, a few curious tricycle drivers. Lara could feel their eyes on her, heavy with sympathy, but also with fear. No one wanted to be the one to challenge a uniform. "Sir," she said quietly, "I'm willing to move my table back. There's no need to throw the goods. People might slip." Officer Cruz's lips curled. "Huwag mo akong turuan ko ano ang kailangan. Don't tell me what's necessary. You're already here illegally, and now you're arguing?" He reached for the basket of string beans on the table and yanked it sideways. The basket tipped, spilling beans, carrots, and onions onto the road in a green and orange wave. Gasps erupted. "Sir," someone shouted, "sayang naman yan." Lara didn't move to stop him. She'd seen enough in other towns to know that when an officer wanted to humiliate you, resisting just gave them an excuse to escalate. Instead, she folded her hands calmly in front of her apron, watching the vegetables scatter. Her silence enraged him more. "Pick it up," he sneered, "but not here. You're done selling today." He stepped closer, his hand shooting out to grab her upper arm. His fingers dug into her flesh as he jerked her away from the table, dragging her a few steps toward the curb. Her body jolted, but her face remained composed, even as pain shot up her arm. "Sir, that's enough," one of the other vendors called, voice trembling. "She said she'll move." "Gusto mo'y kawang isunod ko?" Officer Cruz turned his glare on the woman. "You want to be next? You all think you can just do whatever you want on the street. This is my area. I decide who can stay." The street went quiet in that particular way crowds do when fear slices through them. Several people had phones out now, but held low, unsure if filming would make things better or worse. A teenage boy pretended to text while his camera was pointed straight at the scene. Lara felt the pressure on her arm, heard the vegetables being crushed under careless feet, smelled the bruised tomatoes leaking sweetness into the heat. She took a slow breath. "Officer," she said softly, "may I get my bag?" "You're done selling," he snapped. "You can come back for it after you deal with the violation." "I'm not concerned about the money, just the documents inside." Something in her tone, calm, almost formal, made a few of the onlookers glance at each other. Officer Cruz, however, mistook it for defiance. "You're concerned about what I write on your ticket?" he said mockingly. "Don't worry, I'll make it accurate. Illegal vending, resisting instruction, being makulit." He gave her arm another rough tug. Laura decided she had seen enough. She stopped walking. Cruz jerked forward, surprised when she didn't follow. He turned, annoyance flaring. "What now?" he demanded. She looked him straight in the eyes for the first time since he arrived. "Officer," she said in that same calm voice, "I need you to remove your hand from my arm." "Excuse me?" His grip tightened. "You have already made your point. Continuing to drag me in front of all these witnesses will only create more documentation." He scoffed. "What documentation? Your imaginary permit?" Slowly, deliberately, Laura slipped her free hand toward her canvas bag, still hanging diagonally across her body. She unzipped the side pocket and pulled out a plastic ID card attached to a blue and white lanyard. She held it up so he could see, so everyone could see. The DILG seal glinted in the sunlight. Beneath it, in bold letters, Laura Vergara, Field Auditor, Law Enforcement Oversight, Department of the Interior and Local Government. For a few seconds, all sounds seemed to vanish from the street. The teenage boy's phone dipped, then shot back up, zooming in. A tomato vendor's mouth fell open. A tricycle driver nearly dropped his cigarette. Officer Cruz stared at the ID, his brain scrambling to make sense of it. He had been briefed once, half-heartedly, about occasional DILG monitoring and the possibility of unannounced field visits. It had sounded like one of those threats employers used to scare them into behaving. He had never considered that the vegetable vendor he was manhandling might be one of those threats made flesh. "You're joking," he said weakly. "Anyone can print an ID." Laura's eyebrow lifted a millimeter. "Would you like to call your chief to verify? My office has already coordinated my presence in this province. I prefer surprises at the ground level, but we never come completely unannounced." She gently pried his fingers off her arm and stepped back. A red mark was already forming on her skin. "I was assigned," she continued, voice still even, "to observe how local law enforcement implements ordinances related to public order, especially on informal vendors and small businesses. I wanted to see how officers treated people who look like they can't fight back." Her gaze swept over the spilled vegetables, the frightened faces, the hovering phones. "Now I have a very clear example." The onlookers slowly exhaled, murmurs swelling like a rising tide. "DILG daw. Grabe, patayan si sir. Hinila niya, auditor pala." Officer Cruz's face turned a blotchy shade of red. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced a shaky laugh. "Ma'am, you should have said so," he stammered. "Kung auditor pala kayo, we could have discussed this properly at the station." Laura tilted her head. "If I had introduced myself at once," she said, "would you have let me sell? Or would you have simply shouted more carefully?" He had no answer. Her eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with something like sadness. "The point, officer," she said quietly, "is not how you treat auditors. It's how you treat people when you think no one is watching." The crowd hummed with agreement. Courage, long suppressed, poked its head out. The older vendor, who had spoken earlier, stepped closer. "Ma'am, she said in a rush. "He does this all the time. He shouts at us, kicks our baskets, but if the stall belongs to someone he knows, he just smiles and passes." Another chimed in, emboldened. "Yes, ma'am. Sometimes he asks for extra, so we won't get tickets. If we don't give, suddenly there's a violation." Voices tumbled over each other, stories Laura had already heard in whispers at night, now pouring out under the afternoon sun. Officer Cruz tried to interrupt. "These are lies! Enough!" A new voice cut in sharply. The crowd parted as the police chief himself strode in, summoned by a frantic radio call from another officer who'd seen the scene from down the road. His uniform was neatly pressed, despite the heat, his face set in a controlled, strained calm. He took in the spilled vegetables, the gathering crowd, the DILG ID in Laura's hand, and the guilty stiffness in Cruz's posture. "Ma'am Vergata?" the chief said. I was informed DILG might send auditors, but I wasn't told you were already in the field. That was intentional. Good afternoon, Chief. I was hoping to observe unfiltered behavior." She'd lifted her notepad, its pages already filled with dates, times, names, and observations from the past weeks. Today's incident would simply be the clearest example. "The report I submit to DILG will recommend a full review of your station's enforcement practices. There will likely be interviews, audits of tickets issued, perhaps even administrative cases." The chief swallowed. "We'll cooperate fully," he said. "We have to." She nodded. Then, to the surprise of many, Laura set the ID down on the table, picked up a handful of scattered string beans, and began placing them back into the basket. A few women hurried forward to help her, silently following her lead. Someone fetched water to rinse the vegetables. A child picked up onions one by one, carefully brushing off dust before handing them up. "You don't have to do that, ma'am," the older vendor said. "I was a vendor here first," Laura replied with a faint smile. "At least for today." The tension on the street eased slightly, replaced by a strange mixture of relief and nervous excitement. People whispered about what would happen next, about suspensions and investigations, and maybe, just maybe, changes. That evening, long after Laura had gone back to her modest rented room to type up her field notes, clips of the incident hit social media. The video of Officer Cruz dragging the vegetable vendor spread fast, followed quickly by screenshots of the DILG ID reveal. Comment sections filled with outrage and grim satisfaction. "Yen ang mahilig mangharas ng mahihirap, buti nahuli." Imagine how he treats people who aren't auditors. Respect should not be reserved for those with IDs. Within days, regional DILG officials arrived for a formal investigation. Laura's report, backed by witness statements and video evidence, laid out patterns of abuse. Tickets issued selectively, verbal harassment, fees with no receipts. Officer Cruz faced administrative charges. Some politicians complained loudly about overreach and making cops afraid to do their jobs. But others, seeing the public's reaction, quietly ordered their own departments to review procedures before auditors showed up at their doors. Back in the small town, life went on. The sun still beat down on the road. Tricycles still rattled past. Vendors still woke before dawn to haul crates of vegetables from the farms. But there were subtle changes. Guidelines for sidewalk vending were posted clearly on bulletin boards. Officers assigned to the area were rotated out more frequently, and they approached stalls with a little more caution, a little more respect. Permits were processed more transparently. Complaints, once whispered only at night, began to be written down. And sometimes, when the heat was heavy and business was slow, the vendors would talk about that day when the woman in the beige apron turned out to carry more authority than the man in the dark blue uniform. They would remember how her calm cut sharper than any shouted insult. And Laura, sitting in another town weeks later, wearing another disguise, speaking with another group of people who thought no one in power cared, would remember too. Because the real lesson of that afternoon was not that an auditor had exposed an abusive cop. It was that respect, like law, is supposed to apply to everyone, even those who have nothing in their pockets but string beans and courage.